Hey everyone, welcome to South Asian Artists in Conversation with Irvine Iqbal. Today we're going to be speaking about Irvine's career in musical theatre and theatre itself, and also about the importance of representation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Irvine. If you could just introduce yourself and tell everyone a bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm Irvine Iqbal. I'm an actor that specialised in all kind of disciplines of theatre, television, film, and musical theatre. I've been working in the industry for about 25 years now. I've worked on several West End productions, which include Bombay Dreams, The Far Pavilions, Bend It Like Beckham, Disney's Aladdin in the West End, variety of television shows like The Bill and EastEnders and Doctors. So kind of an actor across many disciplines of our industry.
Amazing. No, that's so great. You've been in the industry for a while and you've done various projects and stuff. What was it that initially made you want to go into performing?
Well, I was lucky enough to go to a school that kind of that had all the facilities. You know, it wasn't just a school for education. It was a school that specialised in sports and, you know, kind of a lot of recreational activities. And I was lucky. It was a school called Russell School, which is based in the northwest and quite close to Blackpool. And it had a theatre there. It had a massive music department, and kind of outside the school educational timetable, you could get involved in all sorts of theatre projects. You know, the regular and the annual musical as well. So they were very kind of proactive and encouraging other activities outside of education, and performing and getting involved with all the musicals and the plays really kind of appealed to me, and kind of took me out of the kind of education hemisphere, because if you're there in the school, because I boarded at school, so okay. I never got to see my parents a lot. I was there for kind of 8 years of my life at a young age, so you kind of get institutionalized when you go to boarding school, and so it's nice to have other activities that stimulate your mind outside of education. So that was my calling, really, of getting involved in theatre productions at school.
Amazing. I know that's really great that sort of eventually after education you kind of found this whole different world that you probably hadn't experienced before. And I know you spoke about some of the projects that you've done before. If you could just tell everyone a bit about your experience on working on Aladdin in the West End and how that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just in the final 4 months of Bend It Like Beckham, and then the announcement came that Aladdin was coming into the West End. So I did all the auditions. I think I had about 5 or 6 auditions. And at the time, I think, you know, when you're doing kind of in the initial stages of auditions, they're probably trying to work out, well, where does this person best fit in our production? So I was doing kind of all the auditions for Jafar and the Sultan all the way through, and then Jafar midway, and then at the end, what happens is when you do kind of Disney auditions, a lot of the American creative team who are involved in the original production come over and kind of finalize who they're looking for. And in my final audition, I think it was the 5th or 6th, I can't remember, Casey, who was the original Broadway director, decided, well, no, I think Irvine is best fit for the Sultan, and they went with the Sultan. So that was the audition process.
Okay.
In terms of my experience working on it, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better production to work on. You know, it was great working with the Disney team, who were so lovely, and the cast as well, because we went through kind of 3 editions of the cast. You know, there was the show was in the West End for 3 years, so the cast changed every year. So we went through different versions of characters and actors, and it was a long time as well. 3 years is generally quite a long time for an actor to stay in a character. I know that's probably nothing compared to how many actors have done Blood Brothers for like 27 years, but I studied it for 3 years, and I saw the kind of evolution of the show and the people who we worked with, and I had a real positive and great time, working on that production. It was also kind of a new Disney production, because there'd not been I think the last Disney production prior to that was the Lion King, which was 1999.
Oh.
So 20 odd years later, 26 years later, coming to 2016, this was their next West End Disney opening, and I think there'd been people were anticipating it coming and looking forward to coming to it. And I had a real positive, experience. And having stayed in the show for 3 years as well, I was lucky enough to be involved in the live capture of the film as well, which just involved all the Broadway originals and myself as the only one from the UK. So, I mean, that was another great experience too. So I really enjoyed my time on Aladdin.
That's amazing. I didn't realise that all the actors were included in the motion capture film as well. I think that's a good idea that they did that kind of crossover. And how was that? Obviously, you were in that role for like 3 years. What was that experience like? Because obviously it was, a fresh new audience every day. Did it feel quite like repetitive, or it just felt like you got a different kind of buzz each time you performed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the discipline of actors, especially actors that work in theatre. I've understudied main roles for about 15 or 16 years. I understudied in Bombay Dreams, and I understudied in the Far Pavilions. And I think when you're an understudy, it takes a lot of discipline. It's you're a trained actor, you're a professional, and you've got to be able to walk on to a stage with preparation and do those roles, numerous times if it involves, repeating so many times. But in answer to your question, doing this for 3 years, it is challenging, and I think the lucky thing is that you don't just do the roles with the same people all the time. The roles changed, to other performers as well, whether other understudies are on, and things happen in the theatre every night. Maybe a certain actor doesn't come onto stage on his cue, so you've got to change it up. So yeah, I mean that's the discipline. If you want to work in theatre, and you are enjoying the role, and obviously they like you as well, so they ask you to come back. So
yeah.
you're doing something right, and you're happy, and they're happy. But that's the discipline. You've got to be able to perform at a high standard. You're singing live every night. You're performing live every night, so it's very, very difficult. But I had 3 years of pure bliss and pure enjoyment on that show.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it's good that you enjoyed that, because if you didn't, and you had to do that for 3 years, it would have been a completely different experience. And I think that's great that it was kind of like, you worked with different actors all the time, so it made it a little bit more interesting, especially the surprises if someone didn't come on time. So that's very interesting. And obviously, we spoke about your work in the West End. Now moving on to like one of your most recent productions in Broadway. What was it like working on Come Fall in Love, which is the DDLJ musical on Broadway,
Well, we've not,
with a majority South Asian cast?
Just to correct you, we've not opened on Broadway yet.
Oh, okay. Is it going to?
Yeah, the idea is
okay.
is aiming and targeting that way. But
right.
I think maybe just to give you a bit of background, normally with new musicals, what happens is they kind of preview them outside, the West End or the Broadway, just to test it, see how it runs well. So in America, there's kind of 2 or 3 venues that this happens, and one of the venues is the Old Globe Theatre in San Diego. So what we were doing with this, and with Come Fall in Love, it had already done kind of its workshop phases. So it was ready to go to kind of its first preview phase, which was outside of Broadway, to test it, to put it up on its feet for the first time. So San Diego was chosen as the venue by the producers. So I went out there to open the show for previews in San Diego. And my experience of the whole process was just kind of unbelievable. From auditioning, flying out there, meeting the producers, understanding from them, what they wanted for the role. I think they struggled a little bit trying to find the character of Baldev, who's kind of like the paternal figure of the show. People may remember, Omrish Puri playing that part in the film. And so he's been synonymous through the generations of people who watched that film as the kind of paternal father figure of the production. And so I think they may have struggled finding someone, and they flew me over, and we spent a lot of time going through the script, going through the songs, understanding from them what they wanted and how they perceived this role, and they were very, very happy. And so I went, and so after I'd done my audition, they had prepared to do a workshop with the cast that they'd already chosen. And unfortunately, I was doing Father and the Assassin, and I couldn't do the workshop. So they went ahead and did this workshop, which then became ready for us opening in San Diego back in August, I think it was. We opened.
Okay, amazing. And I think it's amazing that they've put that on, which is, DDLJ, such a classic, and then to adapt that on stage after so long. What did you you and the rest of the cast, because it's, loads of people have watched the original film, did it come with quite a lot of pressure of having to sort of match up to that, or just a different kind of pressure to sort of represent?
No, I don't think it was pressure as such. I think there's always going to be a level of expectation from audiences that from shows that have been very, already established. We see that with jukebox musicals all the time, shows like Pretty Woman and Moulin Rouge. So there's always a kind of a level of expectation that, shows need to be similar like that. And, if the film was great, the show's going to be great. But I don't think that was conscious to any of the cast or anything, because we actually had a mixed cast. So we had a mixed cast of kind of South Asian performers who are familiar with the film and familiar with kind of how the film has been passed through the generations. And we also kind of had a Western Broadway cast members who weren't familiar with the film. And I think that's nice because Adi, who directed the film, has changed up the story a little bit. Obviously, in the film you had Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol, but now we've got the characters have changed in this one, and it's Roger, so it's kind of an American guy, spoiled American guy. So we had this lovely mix cast of East and West on the show, which I think added value, to the production in terms of the talent and their input and understanding of it as well. But there was no kind of pressure that just because the film was successful, we've got to be successful. And I think that's kind of a poor perception, in our industry, that all this pressure should be put on us. But I think as artists and performers, our challenge is to change things up when we get established productions, and to nuance them and bring them up to date, in a modern, for a modern generation. And I think that's what we did, and I think that's what we've achieved in America, is that DDLJ has established itself amongst kind of older generations, the 90s and the 2000 generations, so how do we now bring it up to date in 2023 and 24, so all the generations can enjoy it. And I think the writers, Nell Andrew, who did Legally Blonde, this is another beautiful thing as well. We had this fantastic group of different, we had Bollywood creatives, we had American musical theatre creatives, we had British creatives. So we had this kind of melting pot of creative talent, and I think that was really, really important. That's a really important thing, that you have kind of a diverse group of people when coming to these kind of productions. So, but I never thought at any point there was any pressure on us to make it even, make it as big as it is as a film.
Yeah, in the film. I know. I think that's a really great perspective to have, because it's just like, if you had gone in with the pressure, it would have just felt like, we have to do it exactly how the film was, and the idea was to change it up and make it different, and also it's obviously a completely different cast, so naturally you're going to all bring your authenticity to it. So it's like you just sort of just do it with your version. No, I think that's great, and I agree in the sense of we do have that pressure as artists, but I think if we just change that perspective, that will just help us bring more of us to like every role that we do. And what was like the feedback from like audiences out there? Because I believe there was it a few Bollywood actors, or I can't remember, was it Rani Mukherjee that came to
Yeah,
one?
Rani Mukherjee came out,
How was
and
that?
she loved it. Yeah, a lot of people from I was surprised the kind of reach it had,
Yeah,
you know, because we had people come, you know, I was thinking, oh, we're only in San Diego, you know. I know the large Asian communities in California, you know, from San Francisco to Stockton, you know, to LA and everything like that. But I never ever thought that people would fly from, you know, long distances. You know, we had people from India coming, we had people from Dubai coming, we had people from London coming, you know, we had people all over, and we also had people from all over the states, like Texas and New York. So, you know, because the film has a huge following and people were excited to hear that this story was going to, you know, transcend to the stage. People came from, you know, all over the shop, and Rani came and she loved the show. She enjoyed it. We met her afterwards, and she was very positive about the show and said how excited she was and how things worked on stage and everything. So it had massive, you know, reach value, especially just opening in San Diego, you know.
amazing. No, I think it's so nice that she gave such positive feedback as well, because she's such a legend and icon, and for her to even come to that. And I think the fact that people made the effort to travel from so far, I think it just shows the need for more things like that, because it's, you know, probably hasn't really been done out there before, and it just shows that there is a high demand and people will make the effort to come.
No, it's a good point, because you know, I advocate on such a kind of high level about South Asian talent. But what was interesting for me is that I went over to America for the first time and wasn't aware of the talent that's over there. And, you know, and being in a show like Come Fall in Love and working with everybody, I just saw the amount of South Asian talent there is over there, who were kind of disciplined across, who are amazing across all disciplines, from acting, performing, you know, singing, dancing, you know, and they're real, you know, high standard. And I think things are changing over there, and they tell me exactly the same issues that a lot of, you know, British Asian performers tell me as well, about not having the opportunities to audition, you know, and training really hard. And, you know, they've trained at good, you know, good drama schools, but they're always struggling to get auditions, especially, you know, Broadway, you know, auditions or film auditions in New York or in Hollywood. And it was interesting to see the similarities of the struggles and challenges that, you know, that both sides of the Atlantic, you know, have. But I think what's happening in America is they're understanding that the scale and the opportunities that South Asian culture can bring to a commercial stage. You know, already this year in New York, you know, you've got musicals like Monsoon Wedding opening. You've got a musical going around the US called Banging It, which is an original story. You know, you've got Come Fall in Love. Life of Pi is now transferred over to New York. So you have this massive appetite now in America, who've understood there is a great market for these shows and these musicals, and these stories, you know, that have never been told before. So I think that was really exciting for me to see that, you know, that people are really understanding these stories and wanting, you know, to platform, but more importantly, that the local talent and the American South Asian talent is being utilized, because they've been neglected, like the British South Asian talent has for such a long time. You know, in America and over in the UK, you know, our creatives just see, you know, two sides to representation. They just see white and black and white. That's all it is. They think by putting one black guy in a or black girl in the show, that's representation, that's diversity, you know. And I've always had an issue and a real big problem, you know, with that. Even now it's happening, you know. A lot of West End shows get announced and there's 3 or 4 black people, so it's just they're always perceiving that the talent is only black and white, you know. And I have a real problem with this, you know, and they're not looking outside of the box. But I think we've gone on to another subject from
no, that's
from Come Fall in Love.
It all links in anyways, and I think
it all links.
It's, you know, it's interesting that we share the same struggles that they do out there, and I think the fact that there's more emerging stuff out there, that's only going to mean that finally they are using the, you know, the talent that has been wasted, or, you know, that hasn't been used yet from these incredible artists out there. So I think that's very positive that finally, you know, we'll be seeing more and more of those, and hopefully here as well. Fingers crossed there'll be more stuff as well. And kind of coming back to the UK, so I know you've done quite a few productions, Father and the Assassin and East is East at the National Theatre. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to, you know, be in one discipline of theatre, which is a musical, then be able to go into a play, you know, which I kind of love all of that we can chop and change, you know. If you have the opportunities. I was lucky enough to come from The Boy in the Dress at the RSC, then going to Romeo and Juliet at Regent's Park, you know, open air theatre. So moving from a musical to a Shakespeare to a straight play, I had a nice little transition, you know, post COVID. So yeah, I mean, East is East was fantastic, and it only goes to show that a lot of the themes in these plays, which is a famous, you know, British South Asian play that started off in Birmingham, although the story in its origin is Manchester, which is my hometown. Yeah, the story came from was first launched in Birmingham, and I think that's what they wanted to do. Iqbal Khan, who was the director, wanted to give it a new feel for 2021, whenever was it 2021. It was a 25-year anniversary of the play. We had a great cast. We had Tony J. Wardener, who was playing you know, Mr. Khan, and we had amongst the children, you know, the younger members of the cast, we had, you know, some great actors like Amy Hickman and Assad and all those guys, and it just goes to show the kind of generation of performers and the high standard of performers we've got, and, you know, in our talent arsenal of South Asian talent. And we had a great opening at Birmingham, and we transferred to the National, and the jokes still resonated.
Yeah.
You know, the story still resonated. And yeah, I mean, I had a fantastic time working on that play, and then going into kind of a new original play with The Father and the Assassin, you know, more of a historical piece, new writing as well. You know, working with Indu, and then a massive ensemble of talent as well. A new South Asian play at the National Theatre. I mean, I couldn't have asked for more, to be honest with you. But I mean, that's the kind of work that happens at that place. You know, they're asking questions. They're saying, well, what's going on in the world, and why aren't we asking these questions? You know, the rise of nationalism in India that's happening, you know, at the moment, or what was happening. These stories of independence that are not on a British history curriculum. Why are they not on a, you know, these are very significant stories of the empire going over to India, you know, British colonial Indian reign, the independence of India and Pakistan. So all these stories are not being told, and I'm happy, and I'm kind of proud to be working on stories that are challenging the institutions above us, to say, well, why aren't people aware of these stories? So, you know, and the National does that. It says, well, here's some knowledge, and here's what happened, and here's what went on. I mean, we kind of put a different take on it, but the theme of and the history was all there. You know, you asked anybody who Natharam Godse was. Nobody knows who assassinated Gandhi.
Oh,
You ask people of our generation, even from Asian communities, they don't
they
know
don't know
they
anything.
know who he was. So and the story is going back to the National this year. It's opening in the summer, back on the main stage again. So they think that it has some value, and I think it does. I think some scary things are happening in India with Modi and how he's managing that country. So it's important for everybody else to understand as well that the origins of that come from our play, and the rise of nationalism and what's happening.
Yeah, no, I think like first of all, for Easter's East, such a classic to be put on at the National. I think that was incredible. But the fact that you said it was Father and the Assassin, an original story, to have that at a National, which is obviously a very popular theatre, I think it's so important, because when I was watching it as well, I realised that there were so many gaps in my knowledge, and so much ignorance about our and my own history, and people that I was talking to as well. And I wasn't aware of the history of the person who assassinated Gandhi as well. So it was, I think it's so important that people are educated not just via academics but through plays. And I think it's such an important way to tell a story, and it's amazing that it's being brought back again. And I agree. I left thinking, I was like, I wish that we had something like this, or it was on the curriculum when I was back in school, because it's such an integral part of the history, which I'm like, why isn't it being taught to us? And how is it working with the cast members of both plays, and did you all kind of gel together well?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because a lot of the actors that were in Father and the Assassin were also in Bombay Dreams. There was Aisha, there was Ralph,
yeah,
there was Ravin in there too. So there was about 4 or 5 people from shows that I had worked with previously. Tony was also in the show.
A little reunion back.
A little bit of reunion, but also we had kind of younger members of the cast as well who had just recently graduated, and was just like ridiculously talented. So we had this nice little mix of old and new that was assembled. But yeah, I mean, we had a really great cast, and they're all that they're they're great sense of humors, and we have a great WhatsApp group, and we all have a chat about things post show. But it was a great cast to be a part of.
Yeah, it just makes the job a lot better when you really get on, and you've got a good connection with everyone in the cast, and that will kind of show on stage as well. We had every time I do these chats, I like to just get like a few questions in. We had a question from someone. He's graduating drama school this year, so his question was, what advice do you have for a Desi actor who is graduating from drama school this year?
I think it's very, very important to be receptive to your environment. You can see what's going on in the among the theatre environment. I mean, we just talked about Easter's East and The Father and the Assassin. So I think as an actor graduating, he can gauge with, well, what productions the theatre's putting on at the moment. One of which was Father and the Assassin. We've also got Life of Pi. So as an actor, he's got some clue what's happening in his environment. And I think it's about being receptive to the material. They're going to be doing plays about immigration. They're going to be doing plays about nationalism that's happening in India. So it's important to be receptive to these themes, be aware of these themes, and read all of these plays that are being launched. I mean, if he graduated last year and then Father and Assassin is coming back, then he knows that these are the kind of plays that are going to be launching. So I would say to him, familiarize yourself with all this repertoire of theatre, and be receptive to your own environment, so you can learn and read all of this material. So when it comes to auditions, you kind of understand the environment you're auditioning for. So and also you'll have an edge as well. You'd have read all of these stories and understand all of these stories quite quickly. So I think that's one important piece of advice, is to be receptive to your environment. I think the second thing is, as well, is to be prepared as much as you can. If auditions are coming your way, make sure that you familiarize yourself with the material and you're learning the material and really understanding the material, the background to characters and everything, so you can offer something fresh and original when it comes to auditions as well. But so I would say preparation and being receptive are two very, very important things.
Yeah, definitely. I think, knowing who's doing what, but I think research as creators is so important. So you go in knowing what you're doing and what you're performing for in the background, what they've done as well, because I think, it can be easy to go in with a blank page, but you've got that head start if you've got more of that information. So yeah, definitely, because I know there's so many who just go in and it's you're kind of just shooting yourself in the back. So I think make sure, you're doing your research. We kind of spoke about this earlier in the chat. Obviously, we're both very passionate about accurate representation. What would you say your most important things about accurate representation, in your opinion?
As in, when you say accurate representation, you mean
yeah, just sort of representing the world that we live in, our history. What do you think are the sort of the most important things to you about representation and doing it correctly?
Well, I mean, for me, the most important thing is it's a very big question.
Yeah.
You ask. Representation has to be, is about being fair, and we as a community, we are large in numbers, and we have a massive talent base. We have a talent base that is great actors, great singers, great dancers, good all-rounders. We have this huge, I mean, I talk to a lot of them nearly every day. We're in various groups and support groups.
Mm-hmm.
So, and everybody's from different backgrounds. We have people from Indian heritage, Pakistani heritage, Sri Lankan heritage, Bangladeshi heritage, and we've been put under this lovely little pool of South Asian performers, which makes it rich. That pool makes it rich, and they all have crossover understandings and similarities and differences, and challenges. But we are in abundance, and we are extremely talented, and we are trained, and we are experienced, whether it be from an Indian background, Pakistani background, whatever it is. And representation to me is about being fair with the representation, and being fair with the talent pool of people, with accuracy. With Father and the Assassin, we had a pool of performers from different heritage backgrounds, Pakistani, Indian, Sri Lankan, Bangladeshi, and that's what happened in the country. In India, all of these countries separated and partitioned, and we had East and West Pakistan. So we were all from the same cloth in the end, as South Asian performers. But in terms of representation and being, outside of that and being fair, I think, South Asian actors are still yet to be represented fairly, in the West End, on television, on film, in opera, in ballet. They're yet to be represented fairly, and we have a lot of stories that are going out there that, that other people are playing. We have lots of fictional stories that are happening, and a lot of South Asian artists are not being considered for those. This is going back to my point earlier, that unfortunately, the West End, for example, and a lot of people here seem to think that diversity is just black and white, and just go for black performers all the time,
just one of them. you know.
Yeah, just one or two, three of them, in
Mm.
shows, and nobody wants to think outside of the box. They just want to tick a box
Yeah.
rather than think outside of it. And that's a big problem for me, because I'm part of so many groups, South Asian groups. I've worked, having worked in the industry for 25 years, I've seen the transition of talent, how it's gone from, a small group of people, an old guard, a large group of people, and now we have a massive, humongous, group of performers and talent. They're still going unrecognized, unnoticed, and I don't think it's fair, And as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep challenging the people upstairs, and I'm going to keep knocking on their door, and not being quiet and saying, look, you can't be one-dimensional about this. You have to consider the talent pool, because the talent pool has set precedent. They have performed in shows. They've performed at a standard, at a professional standard. So if they've done it and they've set precedent, why are you not considering them elsewhere? So this is their flaw. This is the biggest flaw in our industry, in fact, is that a lot of people that are extremely experienced. I was in shows like Bombay Dreams and the Far Pavilions and Bend It Like Beckham, and all this talent was there, but they weren't being considered for other shows. They weren't being considered for Les Mis or Phantom, or and these shows have been around for 35 years, so yeah, they've represented in a standard, in a West End professional standard, or a theatre standard, but they're not being considered for other, And I've repeated this point in a lot of interviews that I've done around representation, and I think people understand it, the point that I make, but I don't think people have implemented it yet, which is still it still shocks me. It even shocks me that I have to talk about it. I shouldn't have to talk to you about any of this, because it should already be happening. So, but I find it funny and ironic that I have to talk to you about it. But I think you asked me from a discussion point of view, and until these flaws are settled and we stop exposing them, it's going to keep carrying on and on and on, and we just have to eradicate this ignorance, and having shows like Come Fall in Love opening on Broadway, Aladdin and The Father and the Assassin, a lot of the younger generation like yourself get to go and see it and get to see people represented on stage, which is great. And I think this is really, really important, that it gives you some kind of guidance. It gives you some kind of faith back in the industry that we exist, and we're visible, and that's the problem, is that when we're not represented, we become invisible. And that's down to the gatekeepers in the end, and for them to change their perspectives, and start considering and looking and making a concerted effort and engaging with all the other influencers who can help them as well, to ensure that we have fair representation on our stages.
And I think one of the frustrating things, obviously, it's it's so important to tell our stories, and where our ethnicity is centric to character. But very interesting that you mentioned that we've had Bombay Dreams, Father and the Assassin, so it's important to tell those. But I think a lot of people just seem to think that no, we just play just South Asian roles, and you don't see us in leading roles in other productions in the West End, in other theatre productions, and it's it doesn't have to be a white cast, and a South Asian person could do that. And I think it's improving, but I'm still seeing such a lack of representation in non-South Asian themes.
Yeah.
And another thing that I don't know if you've noticed yourself, but obviously it still needs improving, but I've noticed that in TV I'm seeing more of our faces, but theatre and musical theatre seems to be, especially musical theatre, seems to be lacking a lot more compared to TV. Have you
hugely lacking, hugely lacking. It's going to my point before, many of the casting announcements that you see is just white and black performers, no South Asian, no hardly any East Asian, You know, it's all black and white. I mean, there are some names that are changing things. You know, you've got Rakesh Bowery, who's in Matilda at the moment, playing Mr. Wormwood, again another neutral character. So there are small waves being made, but then you've got to look at the history as well. How long has Matilda been in the West End for? Over 12, you know, over 10 years. You know, you've got Cabaret that was launched in the West End. You know, you've got a British Asian actor in that. So, you know, small waves are being made, but you have to look at the history of a lot of these established shows have been around for 30, 40 years. A lot of the talent have been around for 30, 40 years. So why have they not been used? Yet
Why
they're
is
in
it
another
just
show.
happening now?
They're in a South Asian show that's great and that's professional. Why aren't they in these shows? But you're 100% right. You know, and this is what I scream and shout about every day. You know, is that why isn't, you know, talent being used? I mean, last year and the year before we had Broken Wings, we had Rumi. You know, we had this fantastic, you know, and that was a very Middle Eastern based story, but we had South Asian performers represented in those shows. You know. Yet they're not seen in other shows. I mean, and Broken Wings and Rumi were only around for like 2 or 3 days. They weren't on a normal 1 year or 6 month or 9 month, you know, year contract. It was only around for, you know, for 4 shows. So, and there was huge representation in that, you know. So yeah, I'm baffled. I'm baffled because I've worked with these people. I know they're trained. I know they're good. You've got Hannah, who was in Dear Evan Hansen. She was, you know, she was a first cover principal in that. You've got Rashani, who's in Hamilton at the moment. I don't know if you know about her. She's unbelievably talented, trained at the Royal Academy of Music like me. You know, and it's taken time for these roles to be recognised and to be cast, you know, to South Asian performers. You know, it baffles me. It really does.
We've got to ask, why is it just happening now? Like, you know, like you said, these productions have been around for so long, and it's still not where it should be, and it's going to take ages. But it's like, why isn't it happening when people know?
It's plain ignorance and lack of opportunities. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's plain lack of opportunities. It's people creatives going for their favorites, you know, and not wanting to look at other talent avenues. You know, it's all of these things that we need to start eliminating, because that's suppressing opportunities, you know. But we've got good casting directors, you know, that are looking at things. You know, we've got Jill Green, we've got Stuart Burr, who are making concerted efforts to look outside of the box. So things are changing, but they're not nowhere near the standard that, you know, and the you know, nowhere near where it should be at the moment, because there are people asking me, you know, Irvine, I'm going up for, I've not been put up for this. Irvine, I'm not been put up for this. You know, is there anything you can help me with, or you know, or what do you suggest? You know, I do. You know, and so and a lot of these guys are really, really, really good. A lot of these actors are really, really good. They're fantastic singers and fantastic actors, and they're just not being given, you know, any opportunity. You know,
to showcase their talent. I think it's, you know, we can only do so much, and we want to do more, but I think ultimately it is going to be the gatekeepers who are gonna, you know, either allow us in the door or close the door. And it's just like, we've just got to keep going and break down those doors to sort of just, you know, wake them up and say that there are so many of us out there, you know, use us. And I've seen, obviously, you know, you're very like active on social media in terms of representation. What kind of things have you personally done to try and improve representation? What have you noticed that other creatives have been doing to, you know, do our bit?
Well, I think I was voted in as a member of the race equality, you know, the Equity Race Equality Committee, and that is just a fantastic group of people. I can't tell you, who are all very, very smart, and who actually all agree. We all agree, but on more or less the same things of what's happening in our industry. But what we've got in that group is somebody who knows a little bit more about the TV side, the film side, the theatre side. So we've got this kind of great group who specialise in different departments. And I think that me in my position, because I'm a voted member of that group, other actors have voted me in to advocate for them. I think being part of a group like that helps knock on doors amongst gatekeepers and saying, look, you know, you have a problem and you're not dealing with it and you're not addressing it. Can we help you in some way? I think there has to be a proactive way of, I think, you know, you hear me shout up and down social media all the time. And, you know, I think as a generation of advocates, it's not just about doing that. It's engaging with those creatives. It's engaging with those gatekeepers and saying, you know, you've got a problem. You're not dealing with it. You've not acted upon it. It's been 20 years. It's been 30 years. You keep saying it. You keep lip servicing everything and not doing anything. So if you're going to keep doing that, we're going to keep challenging you. So how about let's work together? You tell us what the problem is and how we can help you. So that's been my approach, you know, because a lot of it is lip service. Oh yeah, we'll create diversity policies. What diversity policy?
Yeah.
You know, they make up all sorts of excuses all the time. Oh, we've got a diversity policy. Oh, we auditioned people for Aladdin, the Panto. You know, you hear all these bullshit excuses, la, 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 you know, and it's like been 30, 40 years, same bullshit excuses all the time. So my approach now, and that's what we're doing, you know, with the Equity Race Equality Committee, is we're actively engaging now and said, look, you're not listening. So how can we work with you, you know, to try and improve things? And it's worked. You know, we've done a lot of work with lots of different creatives over the last, not just with the REC, but other things as well. Me personally, we've done a lot of work with a lot of creatives to try and improve, to try and give them access, awareness of people. We're going to be doing some work with, we're going to be doing some work and helping mixed heritage actors access. You know, there's a lot of people in this in our industry that are, you know, their father's from India, their mother's from, you know, is British. You know, a lot of mixed heritage performers. So, and my son is of mixed heritage, so because my wife's Swedish. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with actors and helping them and supporting them to try and find new avenues and to get work and to support their profiles and everything. So I think it's engaging a lot more with the creatives. If you're in a power, you know, if you're in a power of influence and don't do anything about it, then I don't think you're not achieving anything. And I think if you are in a position of influence and you can do something about it, you should, because, you know, you're only wasting time otherwise. And, you know, how can you live with yourself if you can't help other people? You know, I've been in the industry for 25 years. I have a wealth of knowledge. There's no point me retaining all of this if it's not going to be passed on to, you know, your talented generation and people of your talent. So that's my philosophy, is that how can we now help the next generation and point them towards, you know, more positive horizons and guide them and shepherd them, you know, to more and more work. So that's my philosophy now.
No, thank you so much for you know, saying that and all of the work you're doing with Equity, because I think it's so refreshing to hear you say that, you know, if you've got a position of power, then, you know, you kind of need to help out the younger generation. And I think it's, you know, I'll be honest, I wish I was seeing more of that. And, you know, there are some incredible people doing what you were doing, but in my generation, it would be so nice seeing, you know, more of the experienced people helping and, you know, helping to open the door for us. I think it's
I think as well, to defend some people, I think a lot of it goes unnoticed, you know, especially behind the doors at Equity. I know that there are people there, especially in our group, that do a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't get to know about. You know, I think maybe because people don't like to say, "Oh, I've been doing all of this," you know, look at me, kind of thing, which is understandable. But I have witnessed it firsthand. There are a lot of people behind the wizard's curtain, you know, that do lots and lots of support. Maybe they don't get recognized, and maybe they should get recognized, you know, for it. But yeah, I think if you are in a position of influence, and you can try and change things in a positive way, then please do it.
Incredible. And I think having the I think it feels kind of like, to me, quite a middle ground, because obviously people can tweet the frustration about representation, but I think people are more likely to listen if there's something more official in place where conversations can be had. So I think it's very essential to have something like that, and I think we were lacking of that before, and I think that kind of thing just opens a gate to more conversations, where people want to listen.
Yeah, and we should also, I think we should also have safe spaces to talk about things too. I'm involved in several groups on social media support groups, and we should have kind of those safe spaces to talk about it. And if people are worried or concerned, because this industry takes its toll on people, especially if you've not been up for auditions, or you're not getting any auditions, or you're not being seen, or you're getting through to auditions and you're getting through to finals and you're not getting chosen. That's what happens in our industry, unfortunately. And I think it's important that we have safe spaces and groups that we can talk to each other about all of those issues as well, and also mention if things are coming up, or if things are auditioning, or if someone's been in a show and they can offer their advice, or they're knowledgeable about a show, they can offer advice. So I think it's also important we have these safe spaces for people that can talk and discuss things.
Yeah, and I think lockdown has been great for that. It's brought those connections. I feel people feel like they can have those conversations, whereas before it felt like there was a lack of space to have those. So yeah, I'm part of you as well, and it's just so nice to see people sharing opportunities all the time and just supporting each other. We're sort of coming towards the end of the sort of main section. I think thank you so much for sharing all the insights and everything on that. We're just going to move into just some fun random fire round questions. Okay, the first one: what is your favorite country that you visited?
Oh, Italy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Italy, because
what part?
All over. I've been all over, actually. I've been all the way from south up to the north. I think just the geography and the food in the country, and we can access it quite quickly from the UK. It's what, 2 or 3 hours away on a plane. So, but yeah, for me, I think Italy is paradise for me, and I love going there with my wife and just eating all the fantastic food.
Oh, God,
I'm putting on weight.
It's worth it though. It's a beautiful country. Okay, what is the best place to eat near where you live, or like your area? Not specific.
Ooh. Okay, so I moved to Shepherd's Bush, and there's a great Italian food again. There's a great Italian in it's actually in Chiswick, called the Villa di Gaglino. Can you imagine I pronounced it? Badly probably, but yeah, so that's my is the Villa in Chiswick. It's a beautiful Italian restaurant. It's worth checking out. A little bit expensive, but worth checking out.
They should sponsor you for that promo. Okay, what is your favorite musical?
Oh God, that's such a good question. I'm a big fan of anything Sondheim, any kind of Sondheim musical. I love Into the Woods. I love Sunday in the Park with George. I'm also a massive ragtime fan as well. So mainly the American musical theatre. So yeah, anything Sondheim or anything ragtime, I'm there. I'm there.
What's your favorite day of the week?
Ooh, I mean, now that I'm a father and a family man, I think it's like chilling out on a Sunday with all the family, eating Sunday roast and being lazy on the couch with all the family, taking the dog out for a walk. So I think it has to be Sunday now.
Yeah, having a chill Sunday. And final one, I like to ask everyone this: what advice would you give to your younger self? What advice would you give to little
Irvine? Patience, I think. I was probably a little bit, when I first graduated, I was probably a little bit impatient about things. And I think I was impatient because I probably didn't have as much knowledge you know, and I would say to myself, go out and get as much knowledge as you can, you know, especially in musical theatre, because musical theatre, it's all about repertoire. You know, you know all the shows, you know all the different songs from all the shows. I probably didn't know as much repertoire as I do now, obviously. So I would sort of probably say to myself, be a little bit more patient with what you do, take your time a little bit, and learn all the repertoire.
Don't rush.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Well, no, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being
Pleasure.
today. As I said, it's been a long time coming, but finally managed to catch you.
Thank
Even
you for
in a
having
different
me.
country. No, it's fine. I'm glad like we made this work when you're in a different country. But yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I'll let everyone know. Got a few guests coming up, so I'll let everyone know when those chats will be out. Thank
Great.
you. Right, see you later.
Take care.